All right, good morning, friends. It's Tuesday, and it's going to be a great day. And so looking forward to everything that's going on in my world. It's busy right now today. In my season of life, it's busy. Just got finished with a great weekend with my kids, and then just jumped right back into life. And so yesterday was a whirlwind. At work, and then some of the ministry things that we're doing. I got some church issues going on. I'm still working on writing books and all of that, and opportunity to be published by a new publisher, and so just a lot of things going on. And we got this new app that's coming out, this 1B7 project of really helping people find growth and balance in 7 areas of their life. So the app that is the kind of the core piece of this company that we're partnering with did a soft launch for those of us who are already involved to kind of test it out. So I've got 30 days to kind of test this thing out before I start seeing if you guys are interested in it. Anybody else that's listening, and no worries, I'm not a high pressure guy. I'm just, it's a good tool. I'm very excited about this opportunity. So anyway, I've been piddling around with that because it just came out last night, and so I'm working on all that and helping the company perfect some of those things. So anyway, it's a good day. And today, man, had a great time just chatting with the Tampster about just the preciseness of Jesus. And I mean, when you look at these Pharisees trying to kind of match wits with him, it's just not fair. I mean, who knew it would be, right? Because Jesus is God. But anyway, here's where we are. We're in the Gospel of Mark, and we are in the last week of his life. Really, literally, at this point, it's 2 days before he's going to be crucified. So he knows what's happening. Bring you up to speed. The Pharisees have been nipping at his heels the whole time. They have just been hammering him since the beginning because he's upsetting their apple cart. They don't like him. They don't trust him. They don't like the fact that the people are gravitating toward them. They're losing their power. The little pyramid deal that they've built. Their little kingdom is seeing holes put in it by the Messiah, and so they're wrestling with that. They've already decided to kill him. They decided that early on. The nail in the coffin was when he raised Lazarus from the dead, because there was no denying who he was. They've been trying to say that he's here and he's of Satan. Just whatever they can do to discredit him, to keep the people from following him and continue to follow their self-deceived ways. And so this is what's going on. So there was the triumphal entry which happened, and the whole crowd began to cheer and really proclaim that he was God. That when he says that he's the son of David, that's a phrase that was unique to the Messiah. So they were saying this is the Messiah. And so they laid their palm branches down, they laid their coats down in submission to him as he rode that donkey in. He rode in on the Sunday before or the Sabbath before Passover. He surveys the temple, sees the utter destruction of it, goes out, comes back in that morning, and as he sees the fig tree that has leaves, so there should be fruit, and it's a type of what's going on in the temple. The temple, it looks like it's the place where God dwells, and that there should be life there and fruit there. But when you go in, you don't see any spiritual fruit. You see money grubbers. You see people just playing the game and all of those things, and it's turned into a circus. And so the tree is that parable. So he curses it because it should be producing fruit, and it does not. Walks on into Jerusalem, cleanses the temple, right? Utterly turns the tables over, runs the people out who are trying to buy stuff, run the people out who are trying to sell things, and so that's that. Then he leaves. Now he comes back the second day, and this is where we are now. He goes into the temple. Peter sees that the tree is cursed. Jesus tells them a story about having faith in God and all of that. He walks into the temple, and he begins to teach. And so this is where we come from. There was a confrontation in the temple just before we get to this story. Not a different day, but that's what we looked at yesterday when they began to ask him some questions, and he said, "I'm not going to answer that question until you answer this question: was John the Baptist sent from God, or was he not?" Well, they couldn't answer that question. So now they're upset. Now, this is where we are. So get the picture. In this temple, the people have gathered. They're listening to him teach. The Pharisees come up, interrupt the teaching to ask him a question. He says, "I will answer your question when you answer my question." And so that was what's going on. They ask him, "By whose authority do you do this?" And he says, "I'm going to ask you a question, and I'll answer that a question. Where did John the Baptist? Was he of God or was he not?" Well, they couldn't answer. If they said he was God, then he would say, then why didn't you believe him? Why don't you believe him what he said about me? Because he said I was the Messiah. If they say he's not of God, then the people are going to turn on him because they knew he was a prophet. So that's the tension that's going on. The last phrase that Jesus says in that deal is, "You won't answer that question? Then I'm not answering your question." Then he moves into this parable that we're looking at today in Mark chapter 12. So this is where we are. I'm trying to bring everybody up to speed here. But before he tells the parable that we're going to look at, Matthew records that in that same encounter, he tells a very small parable before he tells this one. I want to read that one to you now. Not really a lot of comment. Just want to read it so we get the context. But what do you think? So he's had that encounter with the Pharisees. He turns to the crowd, knowing that they're listening, and he says, "But what do you think? A man had 2 sons. And he came to the first and said, 'Son, go work in the vineyard.' But he replied, 'I don't want to go.' Yet afterward he regretted, and he went. And the man came to his second son and said the same thing, and he replied, 'I will, sir,' and yet he did not go. Which of the 2 did the will of the Father?" They said, "The first." Jesus said to them, "Truly I say to you that the tax collectors and the prostitutes will get into the kingdom of God before you." And at that point, he's pointing at the priests. "For John came to you." See, this is where it circles back around to John. "For John came to you in the way of righteousness. You didn't believe him. But the tax collectors and the prostitutes, they did believe him. You didn't believe him, Pharisees. All these people over here that you think are the dregs of society that are here right now today, they did believe him. And you, seeing this, did not even have second thoughts afterwards so as to believe him." So then he comes into this parable here. And it says he began to speak to them in parables. And so this is the parable that we're looking at. And I'm going to read it to you and we'll break it down. It's an easy parable. "A man planted a vineyard, put a fence around it, dug a vat under the wine press, and built a tower." Right? So on the hillside there in Jerusalem, there would have been these hillsides. That's where all the vineyards were. So they would terrace that thing off, build walls around it. They would dig a vat underneath it so that when they would have their workspace, when they began to pull the grapes off the vine, and that's where they would harvest everything. And so harvest time, he sent a slave to the vine grower. So they've done all that. So here there is an owner. He owns the property. He owns the vineyards. He planted it, put a wall around it, did a vat under it for the wine press, and he built a tower so that there's everything ready for a business, and leased it to the vine growers and went on a journey. So he goes, "Hey, got all this together. I'm going to hire you guys. Y'all take care of it. I'm going on a journey. I'm going to be back." You get the picture? So at the harvest time, so it's a long journey. Harvest now, grapes are ripe. They're beginning to pull them off. They're putting them in the wine press. They're beginning the business of making wine and everything that happens with the vineyard. And it says at a harvest time, he sent a slave to the vine grower. So he sends one of his servants, "Hey, go collect my money, get all the produce, bring it back to my place." in order to receive his share of the produce of the vineyards and the vine growers. And they took him, and they beat him, and they sent him away empty-handed. Now, before I go any further, I want you to understand, this is a familiar story to this isn't a new parable. This is a parable that the prophet Isaiah also had already given them. And listen to, I'm going to read this one. It's in Isaiah 5. Now, the reason I tell you this is because Jesus was very specific with this story. He knew that the Pharisees knew this story. He knew that the book of Isaiah was a popular, famous story deal for telling your bedtime kids, and all of those things. Is what this was a powerful. Isaiah was a powerful passage in the scriptures, and so he says this. This is Isaiah chapter 5. Let me sing now for my beloved, a song of my beloved about his vineyard. My beloved had a vineyard on a fertile hill. He dug all around it, cleared its stones, and planted it with the choicest of vines. And he built a tower in the middle of it, also carved out a wine vat in it. Then he expected to produce good grapes, but it produced only worthless ones. So the only difference in this is it didn't produce great grapes, but they understood the context. And now you inhabitants of Jerusalem and people of Judah, judge between me and my vineyard. What more was there to do for my vineyard that I have not done in it? Why then I expected it to produce good grapes, did it produce worthless? Now Isaiah is saying, hey, listen, God planted you in a land. He did everything that was necessary for you. All he expected you to do was to produce fruit in keeping with who he was, right? That is to do the good deeds, to do all of those things, to worship him, to follow the law, so to speak. But yet I come and I look and the fruit is worthless. You're not doing those things. So now let me tell you what I'm going to do to my vineyard. I'm going to remove its hedge. It will be consumed. I will break down its walls. It will become trampled to the ground. I will lay it to waste. It will not be pruned nor hoed, but briars and thorns and thistles will come up. I will also command the clouds not to rain on it. For the vineyard of the Lord of armies is the host of Israel, and the people of Judah are his delightful plant. So he waited for justice, but behold, there was bloodshed, for righteousness, but behold, a cry for help. Now, don't lose the train of that. I just want to tell you all of that to let you know this is a familiar story, and they understood that it was a story of judgment. So you want to know what killed the Messiah? It is his, this is not just a little tit for tat. Jesus pulls out really the wordsmith swords, and he is sticking it hard into the Pharisees right now. This is why they're going to kill him, because of these stories like this. And so let's get back to the story. And it says, and again, another slave was sent. So he's sending now 2 slaves. They wounded him in the head, treated him shamefully. He sent yet another one, and that one they killed. And so with many others, beating some and killing others. He had one more to send, a beloved son. So he sent him to them last of all, saying, they will respect my son. Now, this is the story that he's telling. So let's find the players in this story. The prophets, those are the tenants who are tending to God's kingdom. The Pharisees have set themselves up to be in charge of that kingdom. Right? They're not doing they're not doing a really good work. He sent the king sends prophets. Every time he sends a prophet to see what's going on, a prophet to see what's going on, what do? They beat them. They kill them. Sends one prophet, sends another prophet. That's why Jesus says, you killed the prophets, and you want to do so to me. He's been saying that to them all along. So he beats one, he sends it away, he wounds the other one in the head, the third one he kills, and then so forth and so on down the line. He's beat some, he's killed others, and now he's going to send the son. And so he says this, and as he sent, let's see, he had one more to send, verse 6, a beloved son. He sent him last of all, saying, they will respect my son. But those vine growers said to one another, this is the heir. Come, let's kill him, and the inheritance will be ours. And they took him, and they killed him, and threw him out of the vineyard. What will the owner of the vineyards do? So that's the question that he says. What will the owner of the vineyard do? Well, he tells, in Matthew, adds this phrase, he will bring those wretches to a wretched end, rent the vineyard to other vine growers who will pay him proceeds at the proper time. Now, let's look at what this story says. He will come and put the vine growers to death and give the vineyard to others. So that's what he's going to do. And that's what he looked at the Pharisees, and they knew clearly he was talking about them. You guys are out of here. I'm bringing in a new group that will do it right. Now that is the apostles that he's beginning to speak of. He's saying, I'm going to bring in a new group. The apostles, these 12 that you think are just foolish, babbling souls who are of no account. That's who's going to take this vineyard and cause it to produce great fruit. So he just basically said, you're done. It's over for you. And so that's what's going on in this little story. And we wonder, well, why did they kill him? Because he was speaking truth that they didn't want to hear. And so it goes on and it says this, have you not even read this scripture? A stone which the builders rejected. This has become the chief cornerstone. This came about from the Lord, and it's marvelous in our eyes. He said, listen, this is my Father's house. I'm the chief cornerstone. I set the markers. I set the boundary. That chief cornerstone was a pretty large block. It could be anywhere from 3 by 3 to 6 by 6. It was a huge stone that they laid down as they began to build something, and it was true and it was right. It was the one they spent the most time on, because if you don't get that one right, then the lines will all be out of shape. If it's not perfectly square, then you're going to have a building that's not square. If it's not lined up according to the sun and the way it rises and sets, it's going to sit not in adjacent, in harmony with the universe. And so they would set that stone in such a way that it was going to be precise. He said, you rejected that stone. You're trying to build it on your own works. I'm done with that. And so the stone the builders rejected became the chief cornerstone. It is Christ, not them, who sets your life and my life to where it ought to be. It is him and the apostles that follow, and you and me as believers that become those who build and who work in this vineyard. This is what we do. So this is the story that he's telling here. And it says, and they were seeking to seize him. So now they're so mad, they lunge for him. And the people, according to Luke, get a little frazzled about that and try and stop him from doing it. And then it says, and so when the people began to go, they feared for the people, for they understood that he had told this parable against them. And so they left him, they went on their way. Not on their way just like, oh, we're done here. They went on their way to go ahead and plot his death. And so this is the parable of the vineyard. It's a crazy story. But you see the tension of what's going on. There's this heightened tension. Jesus is more resolved now. He's a few days away from death. He wants everyone to understand exactly what's going on. And the Pharisees realize that he knows exactly what they're going to do. And it just angers him all the more. And they want him. Their hearts are being hardened day after day, almost minute after minute. They are done with this. Along with those 12 that Jesus is talking about, Judas is also done with this, because he signed up to be to see power and money and all of that. And he realizes, I've hitched myself to the wrong wagon. I'm going with the apostles, the prophets, the priests rather, and I'm jumping in bed with them. And he's going to give them 30 pieces of silver to rat Jesus out. That's the story that we're coming to. It's a great, crazy story. And man, Gospels are full of stuff, aren't they? Lord bless you guys. And Lord willing, I'm going to see you tomorrow. He's got another encounter, so come on back. I'll see you then, Lord willing.